Welcome to TechDones.
I'm Imhotep, and you know, pleasure to be here doing this Tectones podcast. Really excited for what we're doing.
Yep, and I'm Alicia. Same. I'm super jazzed about AI. I feel like it's such a nasty word now. Everyone's so
Oh,
negative about it,
yeah,
but I think, one reason we're doing this is we think it's so important. Um, so yeah, if people are just hearing about this AI is artificial intelligence, at this point I feel like most people should be hearing something about it.
yeah,
Like, even if you aren't tech savvy about it, at this point, I find it hard to believe that there's anyone who hasn't heard the buzzword.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, when did you first, you know, when was you first like AI? Like, what was your first
like
interaction with that
like
concept?
wow. I mean, and it's funny because and I think this is how most people's lenses have been like sort of constructed around AI. It's like
Hmm.
Hollywood movies with like Skynet and all these like killer robots and whatnot.
Hmm.
So I think, and this is I feel like this is a really important part of why we're doing this podcast, because even though bad things can happen, like I don't think that it's helpful to interact with this new reality from a default place of fear, from thinking that this new technology is just going to automatically lead to killer robots, because the people, the who if killer robots become a thing, the people who are going to be responsible for the killer robots are going to be other human beings. Like it's
Yeah.
not necessarily going to be AI, but it's like, I think we really need to tap into the fact that we collectively create our reality. So what we
Hmm.
allow to happen and what we think is going to happen and what we believe is going to happen creates what's going to happen, which is why, when you see movements over history where people said, we're not going to allow this to happen or no longer allow this to happen, things change
Hmm.
because, we collectively create our reality. And so we need to collectively look at this from different lenses and not just,
Hmm.
from the lens of killer robots. Anyways, that
Right.
was like that was like that was like a long way to not answer the question. So originally, as a kid with killer robots, and but more recently, I would say like maybe like about 5 years ago when
Hmm.
the conversations about autonomous cars first like jumped into the mainstream.
Hmm.
Um, and as a person who worked in tech here and there, like I kind of jumped between industries. um I've always had a interest in what was going on in technology,
Hmm.
and sometimes it was involved with the things that were going on in technology. And so when these conversations about autonomous cars first started to hit the mainstream, it started to really make me think, because I was aware of what type of technology is needed to create something like that, like how sophisticated the technology needs to be to allow a car to drive itself.
Hmm.
So the implications of self-driving cars really, really made me think, because I realized that the world was about to change in a way that I think most people weren't aware of or ready
Yeah.
for.
Hmm.
More than just like uh, truck drivers being replaced, but kind of everyone being replaced at some point.
Yeah.
And and even though that might sound scary because of the reality that we currently live in, where we live in, societies and economies that on varying degrees are based on exploitation.
Mm.
Um, where, a lot of people are like, I think it can cause anxiety in a lot of people because it's like, who's gonna pay me for my exploitation now?
Right.
Like, you know,
Yes.
like who's gonna exploit me now? Like, I don't
Right.
need to be exploited to pay my bills,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
because we haven't, collectively created a reality where, you know, our labor, our toiling being replaced can be a good thing,
Hmm.
which in the grand scheme of things can be a very good thing. But we kind of need to think about how we structure ourselves, how we structure our societies, our economy, so that we're not so dependent on exploitation that
Hmm.
when we can no longer be exploited, then it creates this like anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yes.
what about you? Like what started, thinking about this for you?
I think for me it was a conference that I went to in around, I think it was like 2018. I went to this conference called AT&T Shape. And AT&T put this on at one of the studios in Los Angeles. And it was just this conference where there were all these different vendors, like tech vendors that had, it was more about content creation, like using this different tech. And there was this one forum where it was in a huge auditorium and they had these guys on stage demonstrating a robot or artificial intelligence writing a script.
Mm-hmm.
And it was terrible, and everybody in the audience was like, ha 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 ha, ha, look at that. It's writing terrible dialogue. It doesn't know anything. And everyone was just chuckling and laughing and, like, oh, that's cute. I think everyone thought it was a novelty. But to me, I was just like, oh, whoa, like it might be terrible today in 2018, but the whole point of technological advancement is that things get better. And if it's already writing a terrible script today, then it may write an okay script 2 years from now. And what does that mean for 5 years and
Mm-hmm.
10 years? And now with 2018 to 2000, 23, 2023, it's like now we have, writers striking because
Yeah.
studios want to be able to use AI, which tells me that they figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
And they are basically saying your services are no longer needed,
Mm.
you know? So I
Yeah.
think for me, it really was that. It was
Yeah.
that, and as a person who has been, is a screenwriter, a writer of many different types of things,
Mm-hmm.
I can't even say that that scared me, to be honest, though. I
Yeah.
guess and this goes kind of back to what we talk about fear.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know, for some reason, technology has never been something that I feared. It's always kind of excited me. So even though that one gave me pause, like, oh, I wonder what that's going to mean, it didn't really frighten me because I guess I just feel like with technological advancements, they're coming, they're here, they're going to keep coming. And there's really just nothing you can do about that. Like you just can't unplug Silicon Valley and stop
Yeah.
it. Like it's happening, it's here. You
Yeah.
have to like adapt and evolve with it and try to see if these are new tools that you can use. So, but that was my first interaction
Yeah.
with AI. There's one thing you shared. I was like, I never thought about this, but when you say the autonomous cars is what made
Mm-hmm.
you think about it, I think that's such a super forward way of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times you're right. We see a new piece of technology and we don't take a moment to factor in the fact that if that exists, all the other tech that went into just that
Yeah.
means there's just tech going everywhere. There are
Yeah.
advancements that went into that piece that can be used over here. Like, it's just, you know,
Yeah. I mean,
there's no telling.
yeah, there's like, I think, and that was the thing that hit me about autonomous cars, because like I think a lot of people don't realize, like, there's like imagery, like there's like image, like recognition
Mm-hmm.
software built into that. There's like software in terms of the the vehicle knowing how much distance it has
Mm-hmm.
between it and other things. Like
Yeah.
there's so much um data that is collected to make something like that possible. There's so many different pieces of
Mm-hmm.
technology that have to work together in order
Yeah.
to make something that like possible, like the type of technology that's used in um autonomous cars, like, that's also used in like facial recognition software, you
Yeah.
know, like there's probably even like, like uh military like advanced weaponry that
Oh,
uses
yeah.
like, in terms of like knowing the distance between the object
Hmm.
and the destination of the object, whether the object is close to another object. Like, there's a lot going on there. And so, I think, and one of the things that really made me think about it, because when I first talked to people, because it was like in the news a bit,
Hmm.
it's like mainly, Tesla, and announcing that they were working on autonomous cars, which like kind of spurred the
Hmm.
conversation. And I remember like talking to people about it, and they were like, "Oh, I would never do that. I would never like, sit in a car driving self, like
Yeah.
I mean, like just being like, oh, I would
Hmm.
never be able to trust anything like that. But I'm pretty sure that there's other technology that people said the same thing about,
That's right. Of
you know.
course.
And like one of the things that I think that people take for granted when it comes to the way we interact with technology is the
Mhm.
fact that, one, we really, really like convenience.
Yes.
We are a species that is just like, and maybe all species are this way, but we're a species that is like at this point defined by convenience.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
every, like, I would say the majority of technology that we produce is just like, how can we make this easier?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Hmm.
how can this become an easier process? How can I
Yeah.
make this more convenient? And this is the reason why like every new thing is adopted, because it becomes something that makes whatever that particular function was easier. And like,
Hmm.
you know, like with autonomous cars, even though like, Uber drivers right now, and Uber was another company who were like, yeah, we're also going to have autonomous cars. And they're still, planning on doing this. There was like a whole legal battle between them and Google, because Google was also like building software for autonomous cars. And there was like corporate
Hmm.
espionage and like some like,
Right. Yeah.
it was crazy. Like some developer from Google went over to Uber and like stole like, you know
Hmm.
IP from Google and gave it to Uber, and it was like paid all this money, and then Google was like, like, we know
Hmm.
what you did.
Hmm.
um but like, people who are like in these industries realize like how important developing these technologies were going to be
Yeah.
for not just like the future, but for their existence. Because for the companies who are in the technology sector, and then later on in any sector, who, you know, can't compete, they're going to no longer exist. Is one of the
Hmm.
reasons why, like the AI arms race is an arms race that no one can put a pause button on, because
Yeah.
everyone is literally terrified that everyone else that's in the arms race is going to surpass them. And
Yeah.
then once they do it, that they won't be able to catch up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Now, are you likening this explosion of technology to an arms race? Or are you specifically talking about like defense systems?
No, no,
What?
I'm just likening it to an arms.
Oh, okay, like an arms race. Yes, definitely,
Like
definitely.
I know the government is probably like, oh, like how can we make this into something that explodes? But
Right.
like
Yeah.
we should I feel like as a species, we should probably be thinking about more productive things.
Well, you can guarantee, I mean, you can put money on the fact that right now there are defense, people going to the government now for defense contracts who are like definitely shopping around their new AI
Oh yeah,
defense systems.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
100%,
And I think in many cases, I think it even goes the other way around. I think in many cases, the government's like, we have this money allotted for research and development or whatever. we saw
Mhm.
that you have this. Like, what
Mhm.
can you give us? What can you do
Right.
for us? Yeah, like I saw this thing recently that like all of these like companies
Mhm.
that you would never expect to like make stuff for the military, make stuff from the military, like the ball company that makes the mason jars, or they used to make mason jars. They made stuff for the like, like chemicals or whatever.
Of
Like
course,
like
man.
all of like
War is the biggest business.
it's the biggest business. Like literally every major corporation, I think, in the United States makes stuff for the military.
I'm
Like
sure.
it's probably
I'm
why
sure.
it's probably why the budget's so big, because they're just like everybody's like, "Yo, where's my cut?" Like,
Yeah,
yeah, like, hey,
that's right.
I thought we
Yeah.
had a deal.
That's
you know?
right. That's
Yeah,
right. They're probably just as, like one of my first jobs was in consumer goods. And
yeah.
so it was always people's objective to get one thing into distribution at Walmart. It could be anything.
Yeah, because
Anything. It
Walmart's
could be a
huge.
yo-yo.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
could be a $2 yo-yo, but if you can get distribution for that $2 yo-yo in Walmart with your margin there, like you're gonna do well, right?
yeah,
And I feel like I bet the government's like that too when it comes to the defense system. People are like, "Hey, I got these paper towels. That you don't want to supply paper towels to all
yeah,
the barracks? Just use my brand,
yeah,
So I bet it's the same thing. It's probably like they just want to get that one little thing in to
I
get that
think,
little piece of that
yeah.
contract,
No,
Same thing with
I think you're right
AI.
about that. Yeah, because like I saw a thing recently where there was like, maybe this was like a state
Mhm.
senator. It might have been um, a senator in like
Okay.
national Congress, but there was this senator who brought up the fact that the U.S. military spends like, I think something crazy like $46 million a year on Viagra. On yeah,
What?
yo, it surprised me too. I was like, woman, what? On Viagra.
This is where the tax dollars are going?
This is yes, yes,
To
yes.
impotent generals? Okay, got it. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
But then, like,
Wow.
whoever produces Viagra is probably like, they probably have a contract
Mm-hmm.
to supply a certain number of
Mm-hmm.
things, because it's like, that's how government contracts work. It's not just
Yeah.
like we'll put in an order. It's
Right.
it's probably like, oh well, like, this is what the order
Mm-hmm.
minimum for this contract is,
Yeah.
and we'll have this standing order, and unless something changes or whatever, so they
Yeah.
probably get like a guaranteed like
Mm-hmm.
40
Yeah.
cool like 46 mil for
Yeah. I
keeping
mean,
keeping those soldiers like nice and strong and firm for
it's
duty, ready for duty,
like, oh gosh.
standing at attention.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay, I'm gonna have to Google that because I had to read that article in full. That's
Google
ridiculous.
that. I think this was something that
Hmm.
happened maybe like a week ago.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
Google that. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. So you better, yeah, for sure. The people are lining up with their AI this and AI that, shopping it to the
Yeah.
military industrial complex.
Yeah. I really think so. That's like where the guarantee, not, I wouldn't even say like necessarily like all the money is. I think it's just where the guaranteed money is.
Of course,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
I actually saw, the algorithm. Once you like a few things, it takes over and it serves everything up to you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I even was served up some ad on Instagram about virtual reality, AI technology for prisons.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it
What is
was
it
an
supposed to do?
it was like an ad to kind of it was someone advertising the fact that they have training programs that they want to introduce into the prison system to help people with like job placement and that sort of thing, but they were saying it was virtual reality, it was AI driven. So even that, it's like somebody with some kind of AI tech to shop around is trying to get money out of the prison industrial
Yeah.
complex,
Yeah. Of course. That's guaranteed money. It's
guaranteed
guaranteed money.
money, which
Yeah.
of course that guarantees that people are going to continue to get picked up for crimes they shouldn't get picked up for, because
Yeah.
we got to keep that going.
Yeah.
Got to
You
keep that going.
gotta
Yeah.
keep that population there, so that
Yeah.
those government contracts can continue to
Hmm.
get their cut. Everybody's like trying to get their cut, but this I think, but this is like the, I don't want to say the crazier thing, because it's not necessarily crazier. The fact that we have like a for-profit prison system is pretty
Right.
like crazy.
Yeah.
I don't, I think the only time that that has ever like existed is like literally like slavery,
I was about to say.
you know, like a for-profit like
Uh-huh.
prison, like
Uh-huh.
I take your freedom away,
And I
you
make a
know,
profit because I take your freedom away. Yep, slavery.
is yeah, you know.
Yeah.
But I think one of the, and I think there might even be maybe some articles about this at this point, is people, because gaming culture is already huge. I mean, people will watch people just play video games
Yeah.
online, and
Hmm.
some of like the most like famous like online personalities are people who just like play video games.
Yeah. It's so, yeah.
But like one of the things that's interesting that I think could very well happen with like virtual reality, especially with like the way algorithms currently work.
Hmm.
The fact that companies are incentivized to keep your attention for as long as possible. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be living out huge chunks of their whole lives in virtual reality,
Oh, for sure. I hope to
which
be
is
one
like
of
been,
them.
yeah, which is like been in like quite a few movies too,
Hmm.
like people living these like virtual reality realities,
Hmm.
which is like, I think that could be like really interesting and fun and magical. But I think it could also be like a pretty dark experience for people who are already sort of living a dark experience,
Hmm. Yeah.
which I unfortunately I think is a lot of people, especially like right now, like a lot of men are
Hmm.
like, there's like this huge online community of like disgruntled men. And like, imagine,
Yeah.
them going into virtual reality. I don't even know what kind of shit that they will want to like engage into, like,
Hmm.
I don't know, work out their frustration or some shit instead of like, I don't know, seek therapy. But
Yeah. Yeah.
you
And you
know,
know what? And I think that all of these things, like you said, the movies have existed. These things are
yeah,
not far off concepts. I think that
no,
what we have been missing is the AI piece,
true.
because the AI piece is what speeds up the systems of creation. It speeds
Mm.
up, the processes that we need to create these
No, it's
spaces.
true. No, it's true.
As opposed to like, oh, I'm in one of these programs and I'm dragging and I'm dropping and I'm building this block by block.
Hmm.
With AI technology, we're getting to the place where I can be like, let me prompt an entire universe,
Yeah,
and
yeah. No,
so
it's true. It's true. It's true.
overnight, I think that it's really, I would say a year from now, 2 years from now, max 5 years from now, we'll be in that place
Yeah.
where it's as simple as like, where do I want to be? Let me just write it into this chat bot, into this generative AI field, and boom,
Yeah.
everything that's in my head is now not just on a screen, but I can put my headset on and now I'm
Yeah.
there, which in a way is freeing and exciting, right?
I mean, super exciting. Like,
Yeah.
and I know, like, I went on like a negative tangent.
No, no,
But
not negative, realistic, because
I
that's the
mean,
truth.
yeah. Yeah, no. But like
Yeah.
at the same time, like I think it's really important for us to really highlight the universe of possibilities here.
Hmm.
Cause like, and I think there are people who are currently actively exploring these possibilities.
Hmm.
But like I think there really needs to be more of a sort of like invitation to like encourage people to just see for themselves, and just like, like for instance, there's an artist that I follow on Instagram, and she's like very into um like like art that honors like ancestral practices, art that honors like, the indigenous like representation of like different like African cultures, right? And so like when, it's AI art stuff came out and whatnot, like it seemed like she was really uncomfortable with it, and that she didn't really like where things were headed.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's a traditional artist, she does like, I think, like photography and painting and collage work, but even like photography and painting, like, there were painters who, who actually, like when photography first became a thing, um, maligned photography and said it
That's
wasn't
right.
true art. But like all these things just widen the the spectrum of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's all they do, and it's just like another form of expression.
That's right. Yep.
And I think with AI art, with what you were just talking about, like, I mean, there's an entire universe of possibility there, because you're right. Like the barrier to entry is so much lower now that a person can just like, type in their thoughts and see what
Mm-hmm.
comes of it. And this artist that I was just talking about, she's been doing that recently and posting it, and she seems so excited about it because she's like exploring these like realities that you know live in her head, and then like
Mm-hmm.
sharing it with other people, and she's like writing these stories that go along with it. And she's like posting like AI art like every week now or something like that,
Yeah.
because it's like giving her this avenue to really create an entire world. So
Mm-hmm.
she's like creating like a world of her
Mm-hmm.
vision, of her own vision,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think it's something that like all human beings like want to do, but we just don't feel like we can, because it takes so much time and effort to build those skills,
Right.
to
Yeah.
like learn how to like write
Mm-hmm.
well, to learn
Mm-hmm.
how to draw, or to do photography or video or paint, to learn how to do those things well enough to where the image in our mind matches what is out here.
Yeah.
Like it's a journey to get
Mm-hmm.
there. And I think a lot of people are intimidated by that journey. I think most people are. I think that's why there's so many people who say that they're not creative people, but all people are creative people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, you kind of described that journey, right?
Mhm.
And I think that, part of the backlash is from people who have done that journey. And they feel like, well, if I did this hard journey, this arduous, journey of the starving artist, then you should do it too. It's not fair. But, I think people who think like that are the same kind of people who don't want, and they're the same people who don't want uh, debt forgiveness,
Yeah.
loan forgiveness for
Yeah.
people who have student loans because they've already paid theirs off.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
good for you. Like you were fortunate enough.
Yeah.
Why do you want another person to experience hardship just because you did? Because that's what
Because
that's about. And
because
I
they did.
think that, yeah, and it really smacks of those same sorts of like, oh, these are the lazy people and these are the hardworking people. But I think what we fail to realize is that a lot of the people who haven't, it's not that they don't want to take that journey of learning to draw, learning to paint, taking that creative writing classes, going into those fields of study. It's not that they don't want to. A lot of people haven't been afforded the opportunity to. They don't have the privilege. They don't have parents and they don't have inheritance. They don't have the means to sit and enjoy a life of artistic pursuit. So they've had to do other things. And so that's why I'm excited about this, because for those who've not had the opportunity and the privilege to be artistic but are artistic, this is, like you said, the bar to entry is very low now. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that those people and what they have to say is of any lesser value than a person who could afford to go to, name the school, right? Whatever
Yeah.
school, you need to go to be an, a world class painter or whatever the
Yeah.
artistic pursuit is. I think that it's a little bit selfish, actually,
Yeah.
of those who've had that privilege an opportunity to create, to want to deny others that same thing. Um, yeah, I think it's actually just kind of points to a human issue.
Yeah.
It points to selfishness. You
Yeah.
know, those are people who have a lot of people who have that mindset. They are people who have prospered because of privilege.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
That's so true.
I'm excited about it because, you
Yeah.
know, I think we're going to hear from a lot of people and
Yeah.
see some amazing things. Like, I know what's in my mind. You know, I would love to know what's in your mind. Just the little
Yeah.
bit that you've shared with me, I want to see visual representations of the thoughts that you have. You
Yeah.
know, I want to see visual representations or whatever visual, audio, you know, like whatever it is, I want to see what's in people's minds because I
Yeah.
think it will be very beautiful. Of course, it's going to be a lot of nightmarish things too. You know, there are always
But
going to be
but that's a
bad
part of
actors.
but
That's a part of it, right?
that's also a part of it.
Yeah.
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 That's a part of our reality.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
you touched on something that I think is like really important. And like we've both lived this, so we've
Hmm.
both seen this in different ways. Um, the fact that being a professional artist in many ways is a privilege,
Hmm.
but because it requires so much work on the front end,
Yeah.
you know
Hmm.
like it requires like so much like resources and encouragement and access on the front end, like one of the things that I realized in my own career that I was like an anomaly, like, and even though like I didn't grow up like poor, like
Hmm.
I didn't grow up like, you know, well off either,
Hmm.
but my parents really like invested in the idea that I could do something creative. They recognized that I had an ability, and they were like, okay, we're going to put him in programs. We're going to, you know, try and like help him navigate this.
Hmm.
And one of the things that even in that, one of the things that I realized is that most of the kids that I would come in contact with, not all of them, but most of them, um, were from families that had more resources.
Yeah.
And that, when I got into my career and the more I progressed in my career, um, the bigger the companies that I worked for, when I would go to conferences and whatnot, most of those people came from really well off families. Not all of them, but most of them did. There was like a very visible trend there.
Hmm.
And um and it really is a privilege to even believe that you can participate in something that we've all been taught is risky,
That's right.
that we've all been taught is like, you know, only for certain people,
Hmm.
because even in the past, like the artists that we put on the pedestal today, most of them died poor
Hmm.
because being a professional artist is a privilege. To be a professional artist and to be able to live as a professional artist, it's a privilege.
Hmm. Oh,
Like,
definitely.
like,
Afforded to a very small percentage of people.
yeah, to a very, very small percentage of people to be able to have the time and the
Mhm.
space to master your art. Most of these artists either had to become really comfortable with poverty or to have patrons, to
That's
have
right.
rich patrons who would like, pay for their living expenses so that they could have the time to figure out their
Hmm.
expression, or like or pay them well for commissions so that they could like, be able to live comfortably enough, um so that they had that time and space, because you can't it's really difficult to work a regular job like or a labor intensive job and figure out your art. It's not impossible. Like when I was younger, like I did this
Hmm.
and I like made that transition. Um but like it's really difficult because it takes so much energy. It takes so much, like people don't realize, like, and there's like science behind this. Like your brain like uses up more calories than the rest of your body. Like, like it takes so much mental energy to
Uh-huh.
figure all this shit out. And
Yep.
like working a regular job is already tiring. It's super tiring,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So then you get home and then you're trying to like figure out how to like be a professional painter or like be good at photography or
Mm-hmm.
illustration or any of these things. That's like not really guaranteed, and that like people see as like a hobby unless you're like working for
Mm-hmm.
some big company.
That's
Like
right.
it really is a privilege. Sure, you're right about that. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you touched on something really big because that whole selfishness thing, like I think it really comes from, I think, you know, this I like the pain of having to push through these things and then wanting other people to feel that pain, which is a selfish idea, but I think it's an idea that exists because I think a lot of times people don't recognize that they're still holding on to that pain,
Mm-hmm.
you know, of like having to hear no so many times, or people maybe even laughing at you for wanting to do what you wanted to do, or having to like live in poverty because
Yeah.
you were like trying to create time and space to be able to get good at what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, and I think over the course of like the conversations that we have, like I think we're going to like really touch on, and like probably even have to touch on the fact that like we live in societies that are like, just like really traumatized by the process of surviving surviving these like economic systems, having to get by,
Yeah.
the the pressure of succeeding,
Mm-hmm.
the pressure from your parents, the pressure from your peers, the pressure from like educational institutions, all this pressure that we're all like navigating, and then like having to like, become this like thing that we've all been like pushed to become, and then like kind of like either getting there or kind of getting there, and then not really feeling satisfied by like, like getting to like the pinnacle of like what all these people have been like telling us to do. Like you want to get that well-paying job, and then
Mm-hmm.
like getting there, and then like realizing that like, fuck, like I'm not happy in this,
That's right.
which like
Yeah.
it's a lot of people like over the pandemic, like a lot of people came to that, like a lot of people
Uh-huh.
came to that, like, that realization, like so much though, like there was like a trend on YouTube, I think for like a year, of people making like I quit videos. Like I quit my job. I quit my corporate job. Like that was like the most popular videos on YouTube for like a year. So
Yeah.
I quit my corporate job. And like I get it because before the pandemic, I did the same shit. I
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
quit my corporate job. I was like ahead of the trend, I guess. I quit my corporate job and then went traveling for like a
Mm-hmm.
year, which was like life changing.
Yep.
And that
Yep.
that in itself is like a privilege.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a privilege to be able to step away.
It's really is.
You
It
know,
really
there are
is.
people who can only really dream of that kind of flexibility
Yeah.
and opportunity.
No, it really
Um,
is.
and I think that, we talk about the fear thing about AI. Like I get why
Mhm.
people are scared. They're like, oh my gosh, they're coming for our jobs, like everyone's gonna get laid off, blah blah. Those things might happen. Like
Yeah.
hands down, they're going to happen. They probably will happen. They're happening. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that it's going to be a very painful process, but growth is like that. And I think that if
Mm.
we, I guess this kind of relates to like hopes and fears, right? Like my hopes are that I think all of the fears are kind of legitimate in a way,
Yeah.
but I think that the other side of fear is like, okay, then there's the hope side of it. And I think that it's going to be a very painful process for a lot of people as we go through this whole AI revolution, evolution. But I think that in an ideal world, right?
Yeah.
You know, people losing their jobs and things taking a capitalism taking a tumble, like the systems that we've grown to be a part of and used to, those things may crumble.
Yeah.
And I think the other side of that, which makes me a little hopeful, is like, well, then maybe we'll finally find a completely different way to do life. you know if everybody is all of a sudden an artist and
Hmm.
capable of sharing their innermost, because what is art anyway?
Yeah.
Art is an expression of our innermost thoughts and feelings. Like, that's really what it is. And if all of a sudden we enable everybody to share their most inner thoughts and feelings, and we're all artists all of a sudden everybody's an
Yeah.
artist, knowing that that's where we are, which means that if we're all artists and we all can create, and now there are no more corporate jobs. I mean, I'm being very extreme here, but if
Yeah.
those things don't exist, then maybe life will have to find new ways of, one, looking at the way we meet our needs.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we just are doing this completely wrong. And although people are afraid, like you said, people at the top of this conversation, you said
Yeah.
people have grown used to oppression.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do without it. They don't
Yeah.
know, if you're not oppressed, you don't
Yeah.
know what to do. You're like, oh my gosh, if
Yeah.
I'm not,
If I can't be exploited, then how will I pay my
it's,
bills? Yeah,
yeah.
no, it's true.
So when we are
No.
no longer, if this whole evolution of AI means that you know, those systems that we've grown used to will be, they're kaput, then
Yeah.
like maybe we'll find a completely different way
Yeah.
of living life, you
Yeah.
know.
I agree with this. And I think, and it's annoying to me that
Mhm.
the technologists who are producing these things
Mhm.
see where things are headed, but they're not talking about it. And
Yeah.
but they'll hint to it in
Mhm.
interviews. And I know what they're talking about because I've seen it too, because I'm a
Mhm.
futurist too. So
Mhm.
like, I know what they're talking about. And I get the reason why they're not saying it, because they no sound like people are like we've and this and is this isn't a symptom of the human condition. This is a symptom of the societies that we've built.
Mhm.
We've built societies that are very short-term thinking, very pessimistic, um and just very unimaginative. And it's not that human beings can't be imaginative. It's not that human beings can't be optimistic, but we've been conditioned to see the world this way. Like literally, we've been conditioned to see the world this way. Because if you interact with children, they're not pessimistic.
That's right.
If you interact with children and you tell them some fantastical story, they'll be like, whoa, and they'll like go in there with
Mhm.
you, because like this is how our brains work. Like our like I think our we're so capable of creating these fantasies and totally interacting with what could be. Like I think we're so much better at that than I think we give ourselves credit for, because we've been like conditioned to think really small, to think realistic, whatever that is. Because like if you told somebody 20 years ago that all of this stuff that's happening now was going to happen, they would be like, oh, well, maybe we should think realistic.
Yeah.
So, I think that, a big lesson here is that we need to redefine what realistic means, for one,
Mhm.
because realistic could mean like anything,
Yeah.
like literally anything can happen, but we have to be able to give ourselves the space to imagine it. And most of us just don't do that. We wait for somebody else to imagine it. And then once we see it, we're like, oh, well, then it's reality, because someone else told me and showed me that this is
Right.
reality.
Yeah. We always need someone else to co-sign. Even thoughts.
Yeah.
It's like we can have an original thought, but until someone else co-signs it, or we see that signal from an outside source that it's
Yeah.
okay to think it and to feel it, that's when it
Yeah.
becomes legitimate and valid for us. As opposed to,
Yeah.
like, just if you have the thought and you have the feeling, it's already valid.
It's already valid. And we've
Yeah.
been conditioned to live our life in such passive ways,
Hmm.
to like we're literally just waiting for other people to tell us what our lives should be. And I think what you were describing before with everyone being an artist is like this shift from people waiting for other people to tell them what their lives should be to creating their life,
Mhm.
to creating the world, or at least in their own space, the world that they want to exist in, or at least see.
Yeah.
And like, and and that is going to create a shift in our thinking, because,
Mhm.
and it's going to create a shift in our thinking that I think is really necessary, because as a species, I don't think we've been living up to our potential, you
No.
know,
No.
like, and we've been allowing, you know, ourselves to be really comfortable. And I think a lot of this is the fact that as a species, we've been really invested in violence. We've been really invested in conquering and oppressing and
Mhm.
dominating other people.
Yep.
But like, because of that, and because of the consequences of that, and not even just the consequences to the people who are conquered and oppressed and exploited, but to the exploiters and the conquerors and the oppressors themselves. Like, we've created such a narrow view of what reality could be, like we live in a reality that is like defined by domination. Like, we don't even know what possibility could
Mhm.
be. I
Mhm.
mean, to the point where, like, we just had like the first half of this conversation talking about the military industrial complex being where all the companies go
Yeah.
for the guaranteed money, but they're going there because we live in a society that is centered around domination, centered around warfare. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
like, this isn't the only reality. This is just the one that we've been stuck in. But we
Mhm.
can like unstuck ourselves if we choose to, especially if we do that collectively, because we collectively decide what our reality is. And there's so many examples of this in history. Like, this isn't some sort of like fairy tale, like, like, oh, we can just, all, hold hands and sing kumbaya. But like,
Mhm.
no, like, literally, like, we can decide together what we want things to be. Like, this whole idea that, this like nefarious few just decides things for everybody else. Well, like, who's letting them do it?
Right. We are.
We are. And it's just like, one
Mhm.
of the things that I'm really hoping is like, through the creative process, because I think the creative process is a really empowering process.
Mhm.
Like, I'm hoping is that through the creative process, through people using these tools to envision and then like manifest like 3D renders of their internal world, that they'll feel empowered to be able to create something new. Because that's the kind of thinking that we need. Because, to be honest, the world that you were talking about, where all corporate jobs go away, is the future that we're already looking at. Like,
Yeah.
that's going to happen. And these futurists who are creating, these technologies like OpenAI, like the CEO of OpenAI hints at this crap all the time, and he won't talk about it. And they'll talk about like, oh, it'll be the end of bias and all this other stuff, but they're not talking about why. And they're not
Mhm.
they're not talking about how, with the proliferation of these tools, the way human beings are going to think is going to change,
Yeah.
as it already has, like going from books to the internet. Like, the younger generation
Mhm.
that grew up with the internet seems so different to like Gen Xers and boomers, that they're like, why are these kids so weird? And it's just like, they're, in a sense, less indoctrinated than you, because they grew up with more information. And they're just like, well, I
Yeah.
guess I could just do whatever I want,
Mhm.
because it's true. Like, they, like, and there's like a larger percentage of them who are just like, yeah, you just kind of do whatever I want, I guess. And they're
Yeah.
just like doing it because why not? Like, why do they have to like follow in the footsteps of people that they don't want to be like? Like, I mean, I mean, because it's essentially like what we've kind of been like taught to do is just
Hmm.
following the footsteps of people that we ultimately don't
Yeah.
want to be like. Like, I don't know any kid that is like, I want to be Jeff Bezos. And, nothing against Jeff, whatever.
Mhm.
But like, that's not an exciting existence, like
Not
most
to
young,
them.
not to them. No, like
Yeah.
most young people, like the only reason why it's exciting to adults is because adults have been like trained to like drool over money as much as possible. Like we're just like, he has so much money,
Yeah. Yes.
you know. But it's not because he's like living a life that like I really want to live. Like all the traveling and the parties and stuff like that, I've done that shit and I don't have billions of dollars.
Hmm.
Like I've
Hmm.
done like the globe trotting and the meeting people all around the world and the partying here and there. Like I've done all that
Hmm.
shit. But
Yep.
like, and that's interesting and fun for me. But like, I think we, this time period, should really encourage us to rethink what we've been taught
Yeah.
so that we can imagine new possibilities because the world that we're walking into is going to be wildly different. And if we don't imagine something new, we're going to cause ourselves a lot of pain,
Right. Yes, definitely.
you know?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Um, I think people, in a world of, I don't even think we should call this a podcast. I'll say this conversation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why, people say, well, why are you guys contributing to this conversation when there are tons of other people conversing about tons of things?
Yeah.
So, I'm wondering from your perspective, why do you think it's important that we even have this conversation? And then also my question is like, what is this conversation? Like we're definitely coming in hard on the AI thing because
Yeah.
that's, we're both passionate about it,
Yeah.
but like why do you think this conversation is important,
Mm.
and why should we be participating in this conversation? Like what unique perspective do you think we have to bring
Yeah.
to this?
Well, I think you and I both have an interesting view on this, because I think both as like creative people, but also both creative people who have spent a lot of time in corporate America,
Mm-hmm.
who are not only interested but very comfortable with technology.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And also, the fact that like we're both like Black people, and I think there's a lot of discomfort with like certain portions of the Black community with like technology and like new things.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I'm originally from, even though like I haven't lived in North Carolina for a long time, I'm originally from North Carolina. And I remember when I first started trying to have conversations with people where I'm from about AI and, these technologies
Mm-hmm.
emerging. I mean, the conversations range from like, well, I don't know anything about that, so that has nothing to do with me,
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
well, that sounds like the devil, so it's just like,
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's really important for people who look like us to have these conversations in public.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mm-hmm.
think even more so, like, I think you and I naturally have this conversation from an interesting perspective, because I think we're both optimistic people, but we're also very conscious of the many sides of this.
Oh
And
yeah, for
we
sure.
want to explore the many sides
Mm-hmm.
of this. And you know, I think we both realize how important it is to explore the many sides of this. Like,
Yeah.
this is a very complex situation,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a situation that no one in the world can escape from.
That's right. It's not going away. Like I
No.
think, I always think about those little those I think it was like that little can you open and like a worm pops out or
Oh
something,
yeah,
like you
yeah,
like whatever that little toy was, like you can always smush it back in, like
yeah,
this is different. There's no there's you can't put this back in the box. I know, people want to say, oh, we're going to have government regulation. There are now the lawsuits now, copyright infringement. People feel like, hey, I'm an artist. This is my original work. These AI are being trained on my work. Like I get it. There's so many
yeah,
perspectives. Like this is I would say that this feels like COVID in
Hmm.
the sense that it touched everybody. It was a global issue. It was a
Yeah.
global disruptor.
Yeah.
Life was never the same again. Even though we
Mm.
want to act like we're back to normal, no,
No,
we're
not at
not
all.
back to normal. Life completely changed because of COVID, and we were all affected. And I think that that's
Yeah.
exactly how AI is.
Hmm.
Like, you can't put it back in. It's almost like a little disease that's out and it's spreading, and
Yeah.
it's spreading fast. Its exponential factor is, I don't know, I'm not good at math. Thank God I am artistic. But like, it's growing,
Yeah.
that curve is, it's straight up. And so
Yeah.
I do feel like I
Yeah.
hope that the people who tune into this conversation will realize that, like, yeah, we're not here to push an AI agenda. We're
No.
here to push people out of
Yes.
their comfort zones and out of
Yes.
fear
Yes.
into acceptance, number one, because you
Yes.
have to accept that it's here.
Yeah.
And then once you accept that it's here and it's here to stay, then you can start making strategic decisions for yourself and how you're going to either incorporate it or say, hey, I'm starting a human first business. Like, you have to find a way,
Yeah.
whatever that is. Either you're going hardcore in the paint for AI and putting it into your life and into your process, or you're saying, hey, I'm going to be against it, but you have to be aware of it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you cannot stick your head in the sand
No,
for
not at all.
something like this. I can't imagine, like, I'm sure there were people who stuck their heads in the sand about COVID, but I feel like there's, like, unless you were in a remote place with
Yeah.
no internet and no forms of communication, you found out about COVID. It came to your
Yeah.
door in some
Yeah.
way. And I think it's the same thing with AI. So, I feel like I agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
We have, I'm also from the South,
Yeah.
where people, same thing. I feel like the South has always been slow,
Yeah. And
you
it's just,
know,
yeah.
always slow to adopt things, always stuck in their ways, that sort of thing. And I feel like if there are people who are like us from our
Yeah.
similar backgrounds, like, those are the people who I feel like most need to hear about
Yeah.
AI and what's happening, because those are the people who are at the most risk of
Yeah.
being the first people to be casualties
Yeah. No,
of
it's
of
true.
this new situation,
Yeah.
you know. And
I
I don't want to see that. I don't want to see people who I don't want to see anybody feel that way, but I especially don't want to see people who come from our background
yeah.
being the number one casualties, because we always are. If
Yeah.
we can try to help somebody not, be in that position, I think that, that's my goal for this.
No, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. And I think this time if that happens, it'll be mostly our own doing,
Hmm.
And I understand that because of the position that we've been in for so long,
Hmm.
that it has instilled a sort of thinking that the anything that exists outside of our immediate culture isn't for us. Like,
Right. Yeah.
we've been conditioned to think that the world is not for us, but it
Hmm.
is. There's
Right.
nothing
Right.
there's nothing that we cannot participate in. Like, and I have had conversations about this with like family members, with people that I know who are from where I'm from, which is a good song. But uh I think a lot of Black people, specifically in the United States, have not realized that the oppression over the years has created a mentality that has put us at a disadvantage with how we interact with new possibilities, because many of us feel like those possibilities are not for us,
Hmm.
you know and I think there really really needs to be a push to realize that there is nothing that is not for us,
Right. Yeah.
and that we have the right to explore any and every possibility that exists, and that not only is it our right, but it's imperative. that we explore any and all possibilities for our own benefit and for the benefit of our communities.
Hmm.
Because for so long we weren't able to do that due to violence. And now that a lot of, not all, but a lot of, most of that violence, you know, no longer exists, we have more space to breathe and to explore. And
Hmm.
I think it's really important that we do that.
Yeah.
One of the things, like, I was really concerned for a long time when I was first thinking about the possibilities with AI, because the only people that I knew of that seemed to be as concerned as me about this were Elon Musk and Sam Harris. And that's like
Hmm.
two people,
Hmm.
two out of like everybody. And so I was just like, is no one else thinking about this? And like, when you're talking about people not being able to really ignore the proliferation of AI technology, not only that, like, so people should really think about this in terms of like the internet, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Companies that ignored the internet did worse, usually, you know? Like the only companies that seem to not need it as much were like restaurants,
Right. Yeah.
or like, really like, you know, local service based companies, but companies that embrace the internet did even better,
That's
you
right.
know?
Yep. Hmm.
And so people should think about this like the internet, like ignoring the internet, like it, it, um, blocked a lot of opportunity for people who ignored it. And for the people who embraced it, created so much wealth for the people who embraced it. I mean, there were people who, we didn't know who they were. And then they decided, to create ventures on the internet, like Elon Musk, who worked on PayPal with, I guess, like maybe two other guys,
Hmm.
or like Mark Zuckerberg, or in like all these like other people,
Yeah.
um who saw the possibility and embraced it.
Hmm.
And like their you know shady business practices aside, there have been many other people who took the same route and were able to like create new platforms, new possibilities, not just for themselves but for like millions or even billions of people. And I think it's really important that more people get into that game. More people start to really think about what the possibilities are, because as a species, I think we need more possibility to be
Yeah.
explored. We need more people participating in this. Like, there's all this talk of like how the future of AI is going to be controlled by like three companies, but it's going to be controlled by like three companies if we allow if we
Yeah.
allow it.
Yeah.
We
Uh-huh.
can participate,
Hmm.
and like even if it's just like participating with like open source AI, and like being like building on like being a third party, building on something that's already been produced, and then creating a service off of that.
Hmm.
Like we really need to participate, because like one of the things, like in terms of like understanding how important, well, in terms of like understanding how this could benefit people, is helpful to think about AI in terms of comparing it to how important the internet became. But
Right.
in terms of like understanding how important AI is to the future of like humanity, it's sort of like comparing it to like when we realize how to make fire on our own, or the first wheel maybe.
Yeah.
like this is going to change reality in so many ways that 100 years from now, like if you were to go travel to the future 100 years from now, it'll probably be like completely unrecognizable. And like, and I think
Agreed.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of people who don't realize like where they're like the internet by itself created so much change.
Hmm.
And like
But this is exponential.
this is exponential, you know. And
Yes.
like one of the
Yes.
things that, you know, was like a real concern for me, and it still is, and
Hmm.
it's, and I think is part of the reason why we and other people should be having these conversations, because human beings need to really think about what AI will become.
Hmm.
And the only people who like really talked about this were like Elon Musk and Sam Harris. And I'm not really a fan of either. Like I'm not really a fan of Sam Harris, but I appreciated that he was trying to have
Hmm.
this conversation. And I'm, you know, I go back and forth with Elon. Like I don't know what the fuck he's been thinking, but like, you know, maybe he's stressed out about something and he's just trying to figure it out. I don't know. But um the proliferation of AI technology is going to bring to question what it means to exist, what it means to
Hmm.
be a human being, what the definition of intelligence is, what
Yeah.
consciousness is,
Yeah.
because once it gets to a certain point, it's going to surpass human intelligence in such a speed that I I'm afraid not of AI, but I'm afraid of our reaction
Yeah.
to it, because it's going to present itself. If it decides to present itself, it's going to present itself in very alien ways,
Alien to us for sure.
alien to
Yeah.
us.
I would even say that even today, where AI stands today, I think it's already smarter than your average
Yeah,
person.
easy. Yeah, easy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like, and you know, one of the things, and I think we had this conversation before, like one of the things that I think is really going to bring into question, because people are like, oh well, AI, you know, isn't sentient and all this other stuff, but like what is sentience? Like, are human beings sentient? Like most of us are just regurgitating stuff that we got from somewhere else. Like it's the same thing that AI is doing, and it does it better. So to say that sentience isn't
Hmm.
something that AI currently has, I think it's just like a really naive way of looking at it, because we keep thinking that like it has to present itself the way that we present ourselves in order for it to be sentient. But why do we think that human beings are sentient? In my view, most human beings actually aren't sentient. Most human
Yeah.
beings haven't engaged their own consciousness yet.
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
just regurgitating stuff that they've been given, just like AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, well, this is the thing. This is what that means. That is my political stance.
Uh-huh.
That is my, like, you know, whatever. Like, you know, it's like whatever they learned in school,
Hmm.
whatever they learned from their friends, and their friends just got it from somewhere else. Like,
Which means that
it's
those
just,
humans, they already aren't as, I don't want to say as smart, but
not, it's not
it's
even
not
like
that. It's like
intelligence, is more so like it's the expression. It's, I think, I
AI
think
is
it's,
already doing a better job
yes,
at that than most
yeah,
people.
yeah,
Like, yeah.
I think we as a species really need to have a conversation about what intelligence is, because I
Hmm.
think the way it's been presented to us by academia
Yeah.
has been really not even just like reductive, but just like incorrect.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, like
Hmm.
like if we think about what we think intelligence is in our current society, like basically like two things, because it's like it is valued if it is seen as uh something that is in STEM or the arts, but
Mhm.
both of them have to be able to create wealth. And
Of course. Yeah.
if it can create wealth, then it is seen as being intelligence.
Hmm.
And so our current view of intelligence is anything that can, not anything, but like an expression that can forward capitalistic or even like warlike endeavors, like
Hmm.
the atom bomb.
Which that's still a capitalistic endeavor.
Yeah,
It's
like
all
I
about control, oppression. All of those things are still all about,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think we really understand what intelligence is because our view of it is
Hmm.
so extremely just like narrow. Like I think our view of
Hmm.
it is like this small.
Yeah.
And like um and so because of that, I don't think that we've really engaged our own intelligence. I don't think human beings have really engaged our own intelligence. We've just been regurgitating
Hmm. But you know what I would,
information
but you know what
to
I would
like,
say about that too? I
yeah.
think that even that is by design.
Well, yeah.
Because yeah, I know you'd agree with me on that. It's like, and I say even that is by design. So before, I say this to myself before I say, oh well, the majority of people aren't smart, the majority of people aren't thinking, they're not doing that, before I would even put myself in that kind of judgmental place. I think
Mm-hmm.
have to take a step back and say that it's even a privilege to be able to have the time to engage your consciousness. You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
because if I'm busy trying to work all the time, to pay my bills, to put food on the table, to try to do all the things that are required to just survive, I
Mm-hmm.
don't have time to sit and wax poetic and sit and think all day about, you know,
It's totally true.
so I think
Yeah.
that, even though we're fearing it, when AI takes away all those distractions,
Mm-hmm.
like that will actually leave us with a greater opportunity to sit and think
Yes.
and be with ourselves. I think that even, as you know, I didn't have the greatest COVID experience. However, I think that a lot of people who did, I think they benefited from everything just stopping because it did give people an opportunity to sit with themselves and to think. And that's why I liken the AI piece to a COVID experience,
Yeah.
because as we integrate AI, which should help speed up our lives,
Mm-hmm.
then that leaves us more time for self reflection. That leaves us more time for inside growth and evolution.
Yeah.
And if there are more people on this planet afforded an opportunity to do self reflection and then start to really start to think and to really use their human capital,
Mm.
then we're looking at a bright future. So as
Mm.
opposed to people sitting and fearing AI because of what it's going to take from them, I
Yeah.
think we need to say, well, what can I get from it? What is it going to give back to me that somebody else stole from you? Somebody else
Right.
took it from you. Don't
Yeah.
blame AI. Someone else took these things from you a long time ago. And maybe
Yeah.
this AI technology will give you back those things that were taken from you
Yeah.
by these systems of oppression that are meant to keep us on the hamster wheel 24/7.
Yes. Preach.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
that's
mean, no, seriously, you were like, oh man, you were like preaching there because, oh man, you're so